Okay. Yeah, welcome everyone to another editorial committee Connectiv meeting here. I'm really excited about this one. My colleague Matt Kinsman had some Neal Award winners a couple weeks ago, and that went really well. And I took a look at some of the awards, and these two people we have on today, Jenna Telesca and Donna Kimura, really stood out for me as well. So I'm excited to hear and see their presentation. Talking to Jenna this week, I can't wait to hear how she manages everything, because she talked about the data they integrate, and she's doing print, digital. They just did a redesign. They're tweeting, social media. She's meeting with the business side 2 or 3 times a week. So it's we always talk about the hats we're all wearing now, and this will be a great example of that. And then doing everything amazingly to win the Neal Award for Best Brand. Actually, let me go to here. And at the Neal Awards, I was sitting with John McManus and could see the pride he was taking in the winners and the people on his staff and the work they're doing. John, could you talk to that a little bit?
Sure, and happy Thursday, everybody. Thanks, Ron. We all get to do a job that's hard. Jenna, all over the map in terms of the value you create. We have colleagues that have skill sets that are enormous in lots of different directions. I've gotten to work with Donna Kimura for about 12, 13 years now. Donna is an expert in the technicalities of leveraging tax code, arcane tax code, so that developers can create housing for people whose incomes are below the area median income. And so she knows all of those technical, financial, capital aspects and writes a lot about that. But in turning to the populations that are supported and served by those developers, has constantly come up with stories that are the human factors that kind of give all of those people that do the development and financial capital raising and all of that technical stuff a reason for doing it. So that's why it's really heartening that she was recognized. The reporting, if you read the story, is very, very human and very kind of poignant in terms of how lives are impacted in supported housing, and this issue of addiction and recovery, and where housing plays a part in that is such a big part of it. So I'm just really honored to have Donna and some other really talented folks at Hanley to work with, and I'm sure you are as well. So thanks, Ron. Sure.
All right, thanks, John. And we'll keep people in suspense with Donna for a few minutes and start with Jenna. Jenna, are you out there?
I'm here. Hi.
All right, let me pull you up here. Okay. Hopefully everyone's seeing that. Your nice presentation, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Yeah, the cover art is from our marketing team, which is why it's so slick. Hi, I'm Jenna Telesca. I'm the editor-in-chief of Nation's Restaurant News and the editorial director of the group. So I oversee restaurant hospitality, supermarket news, and our events. The biggest one is MUFSO. I think I put a picture of myself looking particularly put together and cleaned up in the next slide, but we can skip that. But I was very honored this year to get to be awarded with 2 Neal Awards for the Best Media Brand and the Best Single Issue. It's just such an amazing group of folks, and I'm always so inspired every year when I go, especially when we don't win. So actually, let's go to the next slide. So the portfolio I'm working with, I work with 3 of the 4 magazines. I oversee 4 of the print issues and the 3 websites. And the name of the game for us is always like working smartly. So there's not a lot of spare time. We have 2 designers. They work in total on 48 magazines a year. So every day we're kind of working towards a print issue. We're tackling breaking news. We're all wearing all those different hats, like everybody on this call, and trying to figure out like how do we make it easier to get it all done. So when I was thinking about the stuff that have been in my mind lately, especially in the past year, if you want to go to the next slide, it's been design and data. Those are the 2 areas that I've been spending a lot of focus on because I wanted to make sure that there's just some areas I thought we could really improve on. And here I'm going to share some takeaways about what I've been thinking about and how it applies to, my work at NRN and our multi-platform approach, because you can never think of one thing anymore, right? You have to think about, if you change one thing, you have to think about how you're going to change it across, because you don't want to have to keep doing things over and over again. And the 2 of the big projects I worked on last year were a redesign of our print publication, which of course has cross-platform implications, and an interactive database using data that we've been collecting for 30 years, but just for the past 3 years is what we're going to talk about. So each one's going to be using design and data to X. So if you go to the next slide, using design and data to make art where there isn't art. This is always a challenge when you're doing, especially like deep dives on important stories, and you don't want to lean on a lot of stock art. So last year we did a look also on addiction in the restaurant industry, and we wanted to make sure to show the individual voices behind the trends and balance the bigger picture pieces of addiction with like actual voices of the chefs and owners. And like art is very tough on this. I'm sure Donna will agree. And I didn't want to lean on too much on stock images, so we really just used text as art. And that was something that kind of helped us achieve our goal of having the voice prominent on the page, the voice of the industry, and it fills the page, right? We didn't need to have any stock art on a lot of pages. And if you go to the next page on here, you'll see that we designed it once. I'm a big believer, when possible, even when you're busy, especially when you should do it, is design it for all the platforms it's going to be on at the same time. So try and make things that we could repurpose across all the different, usually we're digital first, sometimes on big things like this, you kind of have to do it all at the same time. And you have 2 designers that are doing a lot. So you'll see like we made it so that the text could work as art on the digital stories. We could use it as a tease on social. There's always some translation, but usually if you do it the right way, you can kind of use it shamelessly over and over and over again, and you save a lot of time. It does take a lot of planning in the beginning and making sure that you're touching base with people that aren't necessarily always like intersecting their work. But there's a lot of meetings coordinating this and over communication. It worked out pretty well.
Who chooses the quotes that you use, Jenna?
I think I chose these. I might have micromanaged this project, but
okay.
Yeah.
Go next.
But it should be the editor. We're working actually on a template for submitting stories that aren't just like breaking news, like a new exec change, like so that you have the writer identify strong quotes, and then have a template for the digital team to kind of plug that right in. So like the more you can automate it and have the people that are the experts identifying the quotes, it's tough for like the production side to necessarily be able to like design it, absorb it, and process it and identify it. So the more we could kind of automate that, the better, in my opinion.
Okay.
And then another thing we've been conscious of is using design and data to promote inclusivity in the industry. Many, I think, many business publications and industries have a problem, or aware of the problem of gender and diversity at the top levels, and that's who we're writing to. And what I think you could do in B2B is just simply show people of different genders and across backgrounds wherever you can. And I know it sounds basic and easy, but like good reporting, making something look easy takes a lot of effort. It's hard. You have to work hard on the stock. In order to change what people think of as default, and I just think we should be accountable for making sure we're representing different people. If someone closes their eyes and they think of a CEO in your industry, maybe it's not the same thing they close their eyes and pictured 50 years ago or 10 years ago or 20. And one of the things we did this year in January was we have a power list every year, actually, and this year we took it over with just women executives. And I wanted to be very careful with the branding on that. I wanted the women on the cover to look like superheroes. A couple times a year we save up to get an illustration, and this was one that we worked really closely with the illustrator. The designer worked with him. I wanted to make sure there was gray hair. I wanted to make sure there was like semi-realistic bodies. I know it's a cartoon, but people look to that. And I wanted no pink, but now that I'm looking at it, I think they snuck pink in, didn't they?
Yeah, but you got black.
Yeah. And it was the time of year that we were doing this was during the holiday time, so we actually were having trouble. We ended up getting an illustrator that did fashion primarily. So translating, fatten up the women to him was like a conversation I had to have. And I ended up being really happy with it, and we ended up using this for events where we're doing pop-up events with the women that are on the list at different conferences, and we're able to use this branding across, and we made sure it was versatile so we could use it online as well and on the landing page, which I didn't take a screenshot of. I should have. And yeah, it's kind of weird talking to yourself to a bunch of people. Anyone have any questions or comments or thoughts on how I could do things better? Just definitely jump in. Okay. So another thing on using design and data would be to tell a story to enhance deep dives and storytelling. This was the issue that we put in and won the best issue for the Neal Awards, and it looked at the teen. The teen as a person, as a consumer, as a worker in the restaurant industry. Teens are kind of the backbone of workers and eaters, and we wanted to see how that's changed over time, how when teens were kind of part of the default workforce, and now that's not the case anymore, and how they're impacting issues like minimum wage, right? The wages were intended for these workers when they were teenagers, not necessarily people supporting a family, and how the industry is dealing with that legacy. So we wanted to be very, we did stories where we're talking to people and we're doing regular reporting, but we also wanted to make sure we were leaning on data as much as possible. We did not want to be like the old man shaking fist at the cloud. We did not want, the teens these days, they're so lazy. I just want to make sure we really stuck to the data and didn't kind of let our prejudices about younger people impact our reporting. So we carved out 4 pages in the issue to tell a data story. And to be very transparent here, it just did not turn into an efficient process. We split up the research. It was not consistent. I ended up doing this during a weekend while at a conference before we shipped, just keeping it real. But we were able to translate this into galleries. But the idea of making sure that we were looking specifically okay, we think this is happening with teens. Really, what does the data say? What does the government data say? Are teens less interested in driving? Yes. They have fewer licenses. They're drinking less. They're having sex less. They're doing drugs less. A lot of less. And it's just really important for our readers to know. So kind of taking a broad look at something pretty specific. And then if you go to the next page, another thing that I've been noticing is that the more you could tell a data story without drowning in data, the better. I'm looking at this slide, and I probably shouldn't have even had the data at the top. This probably should have just been the summaries and not, because we get really excited about data as journalists, and you just want to share it. You're like, I know it's 17.2%. No one cares about the 0.2. They want to know, like, what does that 17% mean to them in their job. So we started to do that down here. Actually, it's a little small, so, teens like basil, they like mustard, or things like that.
It's translated well to the digital platform, obviously?
Yeah. Well, not obviously, right? Because this got done during the weekend before ship, but we ended up translating this pretty well with gallery slides. So we were able to do that. Ideally, this would have been done at the same time, and we were able to do it, like I said, we were able to do in the past. But this is an example of where it didn't really work out that way, but it ended up working out in the end.
Yeah, that's a great spread.
So on the next slide, using data to make data more useful. We have a long-term project we've been doing for decades. It's called the Top 200. It's had different names. First it was the Top 100, then we added a second 100, and here we are. It's always tough with the limitations of our CMS to really do the project justice online and make it so that somebody can use it. We look at, and we have a data editor that does this as part of his job, right? No one has one job, right? He pulls together system-wide sales from the public companies. Also, he makes his own estimates. We do unit counts, estimated sales per unit. We look at market share, segment leaders. It's like a dense book of data. And I wanted to do more with it because it's our most popular content, and it's really just during the summer. We've expanded it to different issues and looked at sliced and diced it, but we didn't really, it's just like a one-time-a-year thing. So this project that I was able to do, we built an interactive database. And this actually went through outside of our normal CMS. We had to put together a business case with our company. We had to keep asking and putting proposals with the dev team until they just gave in to make me go away, essentially, with kind, gentle pressure. And the idea was that we agreed to be a template for the company to use this again, which usually kind of is a back doorway in. And I ended up being the product manager on this, essentially, because it was just me working with a third-party developer team. So boning up on development trends yourself can be really helpful, and know your way around good user experience and UX based on what you like. I was really where we got the furthest with the developers were showing screenshots and sending them links of things that we wanted pieces of, and just kind of giving them examples and the kind of experience you like, and trusting your gut too. Like, I had to fight for making it mobile first, which you might not think to ask about, but our readers, like the rest of us, live on our phones, and if it's not mobile first, it doesn't work. Of course, I took screenshots on my desktop, but you can go to here on your phone. This is just we ended up launching it. It took longer than it should have, but we launched it last summer, and we're going to update it in a few weeks with 2019's numbers. But you're able to do a drop down, look at the different things, look at the individual companies, sort by segment, personalize it to our readers so that they're able to do that, to really use it all the time. And I know whenever I'm getting an argument with somebody about some sort of trend in the industry or how many units Starbucks has, I pull this up. And then if you go to the next slide, so not just the digital component of Top 200, I wanted to also expand it to be a year-round experience. So even thinking about print, we abandoned the first 100 and second 100. They were different issues, combined them together as a source book, and really leaned into making comparisons over the data set as a whole, the Top 200 as a whole, instead of trying to compare 101 to 200 over each other, just really giving people the insight that they're looking for. And I wanted to think like a PR team, where we're not just dumping our data and then leaving it the rest of the year, where we started doing monthly stories online and a monthly newsletter, and it's also in our print books too, where we relate the Top 200 to breaking news. We slice and dice things that didn't get into the original. We do things that sometimes we think are too obvious but do really well, like the top 5 bakery chains, the top 5 quick service restaurants, like going back and doing little pieces from the book and breaking it out as galleries so that people are able to absorb it, because no one reads something and absorbs it the way we do. And of course, as part of this process, we have templated infographics that we use over and over again throughout the print book. But the result was that we changed up the cadence to make it more useful for our readers, hopefully. And we had top 200 in their inbox every month, and we still do, so that they're aware of what we're doing year round. And the result was we did get the biggest metrics boost. We hit a record that month related to this, so it did work. Did you have a question, Ron?
No. In fact, that's what I was going to ask. Which metrics and matter to you most?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough too because a lot of this is gated. So you want it to perform well. You have to figure out what's gated, what's not. You know, if you're doing the top 5 bakeries, maybe you don't gate that. But if you're doing an analysis and deep dive, you want to make sure that's gated. So kind of using some of this as teaser to get people to go into gated content is the point, how we're trying to do it. Okay, so next slide. So as I mentioned, we did a redesign last fall. I'm just going to talk about a couple highlights on things we thought about as we were doing it and how we took a cross-platform approach to a print redesign because, right, everything touches everything. And I was talking to somebody on the marketing/sales side and about doing a redesign. He's like, whatever you do, just don't change the logo. And, of course, we changed the logo. So one of the problems with our logo, which is the blue one above, was that it was kind of hard to see in different settings. It wasn't consistent. If you squished it down, it got really small and hard to read and blurry, and the nations was hard to read on, when you're on stage or you're anywhere. So we wanted to make sure that we made something that could be different sizes and that had different applications for the many different platforms we're on. So we ended up with the ones below, and you could kind of see it getting smaller and smaller like an eye test. And something we were trying to balance as we were doing this, we actually worked with an outside consultant, Francesca Messina. We wanted to make sure that we didn't go too modern because we're a brand that's been around a long time. We have a long-standing position in the industry. We're known for our journalism, and we wanted to stay true to our roots, but also show that we're really forward-thinking and we're experimental, and we just want to have like a clean, newsy look, and that's a tall order. And we also wanted to reference our heritage. So you'll see that this actually, the logo we ended up on, the one below, that uses some of the references to our original 1967 logo, which actually I have in a slide later. So it's like the swoopiness. We ended up making nations a little bit bigger, and we decided to use it only in black and white and really control the use of this so that wherever you go and whatever platform you're looking on, it really works. If you go to the next slide, you could see the applications like on the website. We decided to do the black and white, and then you could see it on our Twitter account.
Here.
Sorry, we lined up.
And you use the initials. Is it interchangeable? The initials and the
yes.
Nations
yes.
Restaurant. Okay.
Mm-hmm. But for social platforms, we could not shrink it down all the way, right? Nations Restaurant is too long of a word. So we decided to go this route whenever you'll see this on our Instagram, our LinkedIn, our newsletters. So we had to kind of make sure that we had that balance. So when we were working on this, we were thinking not just how it was going to live on a piece of paper, but everywhere we are and everywhere we might be in the future as much as we could. Who knows, where we're going to be in a year, right?
Yeah. Next week.
Next week. And so you'll see if you go to the next slide, this is a terrible scan, but one of our older issues, I think it's slightly from the 80s, but you can kind of see the swoopy inspiration for our logo, which has, I think it looks more modern, but it has where we came from and where we're going all together. So Okay.
Excellent.
Any questions?
I guess I have a question, which is a little kind of back to the future. This is APEC. What were when you went digital first or platform agnostic, however you define it, what were the big issues in terms of your content planning?
Oh, goodness. Well, the big issues are, there's a bunch of issues, but making sure that everybody on the different teams that might not touch all platforms know where the content is. So we have we use Trello so that you could follow, all the content lives on one card at one time. So that even though it went online, so you do your feature, it goes there, you have what you need in order for it to work in the print book. So just making sure that everything is where you need it. Sometimes time can be an issue too, right? It's breaking news and then it changes. So making sure that you have that final sweep through to make sure that you update things, knowing that something that was intended to be some way, things change really quickly. But workflow is usually the tough thing, making sure that all the assets are in the same place, which sounds basic, but it can be a huge challenge, right, dealing with all those pages.
Thanks.
Sure. So another issue for us on the redesign is we are always trying to save staff time as much as possible. As I said, we got 48 books across our portfolio. We're always shipping. NRN itself has 18 print publications still, and that's not half of what we do when we're doing breaking news and digital content and events. So we wanted to make something that the design team felt good about, worked, and could just always work, clean and templated. So, we wanted to play up art more. The industry likes to see the food. They like to see what restaurants look like. So that's just, here's a couple examples of the templates that we put together. And Francesca put together, she even put together some templates for infographics. So you just don't have to think about it as much. And we could use our thinking for our journalism or doing things outside the box, not just the everyday things, because the more you could template, the better. We have templates for pull quotes on the different publications. We can go even better on that in the future, I think, if we made them a little bit more targeted to the brand. But 6 months into the redesign, the templates that Francesca put together with our team, with our designers, actually, they put those together, is working pretty well. Yeah, so the next slide is just my, I forgot that when I made this into a PDF that GIFs don't PDF, but it should be Neil Patrick Harris slamming a keyboard with his elbow yelling business, business, business. But here's how you contact me. And if anyone has any questions, let me know, or ideas on how I could do things better. I'm open.
Just a quick question.
Clone yourself a couple times. Huh?
Yeah, right. It's Christine over at CIO. When you outsource, your data projects, how do you structure that? What are the best uses of the outsourcing that you've found?
So you mean outsourcing in the database, interactive database?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we do it all in-house, except for the interactive database, and that was through, because pretty much our CMS was locked down, so we had to. So your question is how do we, because we worked with them on building it, essentially.
Sorry?
So we worked with them on building the development of it, but they didn't really build the idea behind it or the structure or the product.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So really just having people do things that you cannot do. That's always a great thing about outsourcing.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? So we can also get questions after Donna. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Jenna.
Thanks.
Okay. Donna, are you there?
I am. Thank
here?
you. Yeah, very good. Well, a big thank you to everyone at Connectiv and everyone involved in the Neal Awards. I sincerely appreciate the amazing honor. I'm deputy editor of Affordable Housing Finance magazine, and the story that received a Neal Award centered around a place called the Women's Addiction Recovery Manor, known as WARM for short. They call it WARM, and it's in Henderson, Kentucky. There, women have access to treatment and different services as they go through substance abuse treatment. However, the WARM campus is unique in that there's also a permanent supportive affordable housing development that's home to the women in the later stages of their recovery from opioid and other drug addictions. It's not a shelter. It's not a halfway house. It's their own apartment homes that are on the WARM campus. And so residents have, independence with their own apartments, but they're also really close to the support they need. And for many women, affordable housing is key in their recovery. They might only be working part-time, or they don't make enough money to be able to afford a home in the regular marketplace. So that was why this development was of interest for us and our readers at Affordable Housing Finance. We looked at how the project was developed and what financial programs were involved. So that's kind of our specialty.
How did you find a story like that, Donna?
We see a lot of projects. We know when they get financed. From the different state agencies, we see the lists of different financing programs, and a lot of times we just hear about interesting developments that open. It could be from the developer or from the folks involved in financing it. So for this project, I think it was of interest to readers and perhaps the Neal Award judges because it did touch upon a bigger issue than just affordable housing. It really touched upon the opioid epidemic.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't have a formula for, a story.
Donna,
go ahead.
I'm sorry, this is Mike Lavitt with Aviation Week. Did you get a lot of feedback from readers on this package?
Not a lot. Got some, but I wouldn't say it was overwhelmingly more than other feature stories we do.
Okay.
Yeah. So again, I don't have a formula for a story, but I can offer a couple of reminders that I often lose track of during the rush of getting other things done. So I guess the first example from this story is to look at larger topical national issues and then focus it for your audience. I think Jenna had a good one, too, about women in leadership. That was another good example of this. The second takeaway I have is to take a moment to think about what's missing or who or what will help elevate your story. Affordable Housing Finance is read by developers, government housing officials, bankers, and other finance executives. Those are the people we usually talk with, write about, and write for. Residents don't read us. You all know that from working in B2B publications, but that's very true for us. And so most of the time, we don't have a resident's voice in our stories. It's usually the developers and the bankers and other state housing agency leaders, those types. But at times, stories just really cry out for a resident's voice, and I think this was one of those times. I'm writing about a place where women are in recovery from opioid addiction, so you want to hear from one or more of those women. I was fortunate enough to be able to do a phone interview with a WARM resident who told me her story. I think she was a 30-year-old woman. I think her name is Stephanie McCarty, and she had been battling addiction for about half her life, one form or another. So,
are you encouraged to do hard-hitting stories like this, or it just happens, or how does that?
Oh, yeah, I think we're encouraged to do a variety of stories, really. We could do more enterprising stories, feature stories, and then we also do a lot of our regular signature pieces as well, like our top 50 developers issue. We do a awards issue, so it's kind of a mix. We really do a mix here at AHS. And going hand in hand with trying to, look for what's missing in your story is just a reminder to think about, ways to humanize the story. Like John McManus had mentioned, we do a lot with numbers and acronyms and housing programs. That's really our specialty and what we write a lot about, but we also try to humanize the story when we can as well. So that's another takeaway or reminder I would share. I have to remind myself of that a lot of times. And then another tip that I could share is also, what we did with this story as well, we were able to do a video interview with the developer that we posted on our site. So like Jenna's publications, we also try to leverage social media and other formats. Affordable Housing Finance hosts a large developers conference every fall in Chicago, and the developer of WARM and some of his other people from his company had attended in the past, and I saw that they were going to be at the upcoming AHS Live conference in 2017, it would have been. And so we were able to schedule a few minutes with him to do a video interview that came out right about the same time as the January 2018 story. So it was sort of a nice little package that we were able to put together online for our readers to have the video interview and also have the story come out. So I would say that's another thing to try to remember, other ways to share your story is another takeaway, something to think about.
When you, Donna, when you initially present the idea or take us through that, is it something where you would say, okay, here's the interviews I can do, here's the video that could be done, here's our social strategy, or how does that all happen?
Well, the story definitely came first. Okay. I had done all I'm in California, and the project is in Kentucky, so I did a lot of the interviews over the phone first. And then we had our conference coming up, and we saw that the developer, Gary Watkins, was going to be attending, so we said, well, let's try to do an interview since he'll be there. So it kind of worked out that way. Oh, you made a promo for it? Yeah. I just wanted you to ask. Yeah, so it wasn't really planned out ahead in that sense that we knew we want all the pieces we knew we wanted to do. It sort of fell in place. I'm going in now.
That's true with all the events though everyone's doing now. That's a nice tie-in, right? I mean that can happen. Yeah, that you can get.
The conference was in November, late November. So we did the interview, and the story was coming out in the January issue. So by the time the video was edited and ready to post on our site, the story was coming out too. So the timing worked out well.
That's great. Wow.
Yeah. So those are just sort of the few, I call them reminders, because I know all of you folks have been doing this for a while. Those are my reminders that I could share. So thank you again to Connectiv and the Neal Awards. Happy to answer any questions.
Any other questions for Donna?
No, I just want to say, Donna, it's a very good. This is APEC. It's a very good story. I'm actually using it in the class I'm teaching this summer. So thank you for writing it.
Oh, thank you. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
This is John. I just want to chime in on one thing. When the story is focused on the residents and the communities, the developers can take those stories and the municipalities, and it impacts the way policymakers fund these programs. So anecdotes that are bringing some of the supportive housing solutions to light in a real-world way actually impacts the vote on Capitol Hill for funding some of these programs. So there is that sort of motivation and kind of connection to what the audience's users' interest in too. So it's a very cool kind of chain of value.
Yeah, and the residents have generally always been very helpful and been really eager to share their stories.
Yeah.
So thank you again.
Yeah.
This is Greg Freeze, wondering if just to have a question, I guess comment on a question. So I'm with Lexipol, which is Police One and EMS One, a collection of media sites for public safety, and the opioid epidemic is something we've been covering for a long time. And one of the concerns I have is actually like reader fatigue with this specific issue in our audience, because they really are on the front lines of it. Is the opioid epidemic something that you had been covering in other ways with the publication, or any concerns that the audience was just hearing about too much about the opioid epidemic on just sort of nightly consumer news and media?
That's a good question. We had, previous to this, we had written just a little bit about opioid addiction, in that there was another development that had opened that focused on helping folks with opioid addiction, but it was not a topic that we had really covered in depth before, so it was still fairly new for our audience, and we were not worried about the issue being overly done for us. It was going to be a new issue, and we would be sharing how affordable housing could be part of this story, and I think it was still all brand new. There haven't been that many supportive housing developments built specifically for people battling opioid addiction, so it was new on that front too. So I think people were probably interested in learning how they could bring it to their states or their counties.
Greg, how do you sense that fatigue? Do people reach out to you, or just get a sense?
So I think part of how we receive it from our audience is, I think it just ebbs away at their compassion or life force, especially when they are reviving the same person more than once, or responding to the same address, whether it be a specific home or a neighborhood or alleyway. And just, I think it's sort of across industries or professions, or even people of just like, who's responsible? Is it the person with the addiction? This is really just their problem, they should figure it out type approach, which ignores the disease process, versus like it's going to take a whole a wide variety of things, from housing to emergency health care to employment. I'm sure the restaurant industry, there's places where they're grappling, like, how do we employ people that are recovering from addiction? And because it all has to come together. Our audience, though, police, firefighters, paramedics, knew that there was an epidemic years before it started making the news, and continue to sort of feel like they're all alone fighting this epidemic, and probably don't see stories like this about housing or employment or recovery programs. Don't get enough exposure to that.
Right. Huh. Yeah, this is. Abe, if you're out there, this you mentioned you would be teaching this.
Yes.
It's kind of it's not the first sense students might have of B2B journalism.
I think what Donna said was finding the larger topical, the national issue, a focus, and then drilling it down to your audience. I mean, one of the things I try to impart, is that while these many of the titles are hyper niched, they do tap into larger issues, and any number of people I've had in, as speakers, whether the CEOs or editors, have talked about, that the specificity of B2B, is very solution based, and can look at that, as opposed to pondering philosophically the future of water. You can go to wastewater management and maybe do something about it. Not to knock one versus the other, but there's two different lenses that you can look at. And I also like the idea that there's people in it too. That I think that the stereotype of that students have about B2B, which they're not exposed, especially to in any curriculum, is that it tends to be about numbers and widgets and percentages. And while that's a big component in building a building that won't fall down, I think the people side of it is good. I also think something, Donna, that you said is important for students to get, which is that normally that residents aren't your readers, so normally you wouldn't talk to them. It's more C-suite or developers. But here you made the right call to reach out to residents. Otherwise, they're just kind of pawns in the game. And by doing the right thing, you vivify the piece.
Oh, thank you. Yes, we do that. We've done that in the past too when we've written about developments that provide permanent housing for homeless veterans.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another example of where we have tried to talk with residents, and they all have amazing stories. So
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Abe.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Anything else for Donna or for Jenna? These are really good. I like that they were two real different examples of the great work folks are doing.
For sure.
All right. Anything else till we on the calls? Any other issues back from the Neal Awards or any topics on your mind that John and I can cover here?
I was sorry to miss everybody at the Neal lunch. In my new incarnation, the magazines I'm working for, I was at a conference in Munich and I couldn't make the tickets work.
Oh,
you were missed.
I was taking one for the team though. I was taking one for the B2B team though. So
that's a good trip to. It's a good excuse to miss us. We'll get you next year though.
I hope so.
All right.
I thought the awards went well this year. I think it was better than the lunch itself. The way it was presented was better than the year before.
Oh, good.
It was the year before. It was too rushed.
Okay.
And this year it was better.
All right. Good. Yeah, I think we got a lot of that feedback this year. That was good.
Yeah, very well done.
And there was good chemistry between the two presenters. That was important.
Right. Yeah, I wonder if they've been hired again for next year. They were good.
No good deed goes unpunished.
All right. Well, next. Sorry, John. The next meeting will probably be in September, but we won't go away here. We're looking at a listserv perhaps for this group, and we'll definitely be in touch with other things that come up, and we'll post this session on our website, and yeah, please stay in touch and let your peers and colleagues know what we're doing.
Okay, great.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Sure. Bye.
Thanks.